The Talk Station presents Faith Matters, a look at contemporary stories and issues from a faith perspective. While this is a pre-recorded show, we are interested in your ideas, comments, and questions, and we urge you to email them to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life.
And now on the Talk Station, Faith Matters.
And welcome to our program, our first program of 2017. Good to have you along with us here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station. And joining me this morning, I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Robert Cornegay, Reverend Carl Zarowski, and Bishop Doc Loomis. And good day, gentlemen. Good to have you all back. Everybody have a good holiday.
Happy New Year, Ben.
Happy New Year to everyone.
It was wonderful.
All right, now give me some good stuff. I need a new promo, so we need some good stuff today.
Every show we do is
pressure.
amazing. I mean, what?
Pressure, no pressure. All right, let's start today with a story from the News and Observer. We don't often get a chance to have the N and O in our target. Here's one. This comes from the N and O from January the 2nd. News Observer, can abortion foes and clinic be neighbors? Raleigh board will decide. Now, we've had a similar story, and we've actually, I think we had the original one of this story, too, back when it was first came up. But it's gone through a couple of different iterations and now is on appeal for a story that involves zoning and a crisis pregnancy care center, as they're calling it, and also an abortion clinic. So now, a Raleigh board's interpretation of whether an anti-abortion group operates as a civic organization or a medical facility could determine whether the group can open an office next to an abortion clinic. Paul Specht is writing this for the News and Observer. A Hand of Hope Pregnancy Resource Center, which encourages alternatives to abortion, wants to open an office in a house at 1522 Jones Franklin Road. The house is next to A Preferred Women's Health Center of Raleigh, which offers abortion services. Hand of Hope already has an office less than a half mile away from the health center on Jones Franklin, but the article goes on to explain they rent there and they wanted to buy this property here. Robert, again, we've had you work with crisis pregnancy care centers. You've had this for some time, but we have had a similar story. We had the one about the mobile clinic that was parked in the parking lot of an abortion clinic,
Correct.
A mobile care clinic for a resource center.
That's right.
And this one again originally was about a year ago. I think was the original zoning application, and now they're looking for a variance to allow them to be in a house next door. So, was this just a convenient house to buy, or is this a tactic? Where do you think this falls in terms of the politics of a city?
Yeah, well, I think the article said that they're about a half a mile away from it now.
They're renting.
And they're renting a place, and they've been looking for a while. And of course, when you look for this is part of the marketing, if you will,
Sure.
of this process
Or strategy.
and that's you go where your customers are.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the clientele that the pregnancy centers, resource centers are often in that vicinity of abortion mills, and so they're going to try to get in there and get to the girls before they can get in the
Well, and they
centers.
say they make no apologies. I mean, they say they're not trying to hide anything that they do.
No, exactly.
Right.
But conversely, you see that these health centers, women's health centers, are doing just the opposite. Mm-hmm. They are trying to hide what they're actually doing, and it's most everybody can see through this stuff except for the true believers of the pro-abortion folk. They just continue to insist that they really don't do pregnancy. I mean, end pregnancies, terminate pregnancies is their term, or kill babies, but that they offer all these other women's health things.
And that's ancillary.
Yeah, and that they're saying now they've cooked the book, so it looks like only 3% of the funds that come in go towards abortions. Well, that's so false. It's just it's It's ludicrous. So yeah, they're doing everything they can to keep any threat away from their flow of commerce.
Right.
It's an industry.
Right.
Abortion has become an industry.
Now, the Carla, when we were talking before the show started, you made the point that this hinges, according to the zoning folks here, hinges on whether it's a civic organization or whether it's a medical organization, and they said they may have a hard time proving. In November, I'm reading from the article, the city staff deemed Hand of Hope to be more of a civic group than a medical facility based on its religious affiliation, a lack of staff with medical training. And city codes allow residents to appeal city staff's zoning interpretation. So it's been appealed, and now they have a medical director. So is this going to be a sticking point for them?
Well, I think it very well could be. Now, on the other hand, it depends on what the role of this medical director is. But I can certainly see this coming up and being a sticking point in some type of a legal discussion or paperwork. I'm sure it's going to come up. No question about that. And unfortunately, what eventually is going to happen is this decision is going to be made based on the political ideology of whatever council makes this decision about the zoning.
And those change with every election and every appointment.
That's correct. And there's also a very good chance that it will go one way or the other by one vote.
Mm-hmm. Robert, to me, this is, and Doc, let me address this to you. To me, this is actually very, very similar to a strategy of many other businesses. Publix, for example, the grocery store chain, they like to build near Harris Teeter. Why? Because that's where the customers are. I mean, that's one of the things they look for. I mean, should these guys be treated any differently?
Well, the main difference between Publix and we used to do this when I worked for Revco drugstores. We would always build across from a
Walgreens or
whatever because people have patterns. Mm-hmm. So when they do things repeatedly, like you go to the drugstore more than once a year, and so you have a pattern, and your pattern takes you to a particular intersection, then you don't mind going to the other side of the intersection. Hopefully, you're not going in to get an abortion every week. Or a month like you pick up your meds. So it's sort of like that, but not quite. But what it really is, it's a way of putting your alternative right there where people see you as you're going by. It's why it's more like why the cosmetics counter is at the front of Belk. Mm-hmm. Okay, because when you walk in, the first thing they want you to see is the thing that's their high price point, the thing they want you to buy. So they just want to be where people have to. And look, people have to make a conscious decision, don't they? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you walk by a place that says there's an alternative, it's pretty callous to walk in and have an abortion when you're walking by a place that has a sign out that says godly alternatives available, 9 to 5. So, but yes, I agree with you, Ben. I think this is just, and with Robert, this is excellent marketing. Very good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the majority of the women that are in this circumstance are in a conflicted situation. Mm-hmm. They're here come the train. Yeah.
You probably have to have the radio pretty loud to hear that.
Yeah, that's right. But anyway, so they're in a conflicted situation. People know what's going on. Mm-hmm. It isn't like they don't know what's going to happen in there. They know very well what's going to go on when they go into that abortion clinic.
Well,
they know what's
either
going
place, on. I think. Though.
Yeah, but most of them perhaps have not heard that there are alternatives, and so that's the part where you're strategically trying to be available to that. So as Doc said. It's a very wise step to take, and the abortion clinics have been coming under a lot of heavy pressure because of this selling baby parts issue, and this is most of those women that went in there when they signed those papers, they did not understand fully what they were committing to. And that they were giving permission to, for the radio, disassemble their child and part it out. And so, we're all for, the mantra of the pro-abortion group is pro-choice, right? Mm-hmm. That the women have an educated choice, that they make a decision based on all the factors. Well, that's really not true.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're trying to eliminate the other choices so that they only have one choice, and that's to abort their child.
Sure, and think about the young girl or the couple who have made a decision. We're pregnant. We're not sure how we're going to do this. We can't go forward. We need to get an abortion. They go to this place to get an abortion, and they see there in the parking lot, hey, wait a minute, maybe we don't have to. Maybe they're right on the fence and they're struggling with what they're about to do. We don't see that we have another choice. And then all of a sudden they see, yes, we do. Let's go over that before we go in here. Let's go over there and see what our options are.
But it's so disingenuous for the abortion industry to say only 3% of the funding goes to that when they are fighting so hard to keep people from going to the alternatives.
Well, obviously, that's the
it's follow the money.
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. And it becomes really it's follow the money there, not really the care. This is Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. We'll have more to come in just a moment. And welcome back to Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. Glad to have you along with us. I'm Ben Ball, along with Bishop Doc Loomis, Reverend Carl Zarowski, and Reverend Robert Cornegie, as we talk about some other articles. And one thing in the news from this past week, posted on January the 2nd from the Associated Press, Francis D'Amelio, writing about Pope to bishops, maintain zero tolerance for child abuse. This is a widely disseminated Associated Press article, so it's not associated with any particular news outlet, but it says Pope Francis has exhorted Catholic bishops worldwide to do what's needed to ensure children are protected from sexual abuse by clergy. The Vatican on Monday released the text of a December 28th letter Francis sent to bishops about injustices to children. They included slave labor, malnutrition, lack of education, and sexual exploitation, including abuse by a priest. In the letter, Francis decried the sufferings, the experiences, and the pains of minors who are abused sexually by priests. It is a sin that shames us, the Pope wrote. Persons responsible for this protection of those children destroyed their dignity. The letter is the letter of the Holy Father Francis to the bishops on the Feast of the Holy Innocents, 02/01/2017. So this is set for January the 2nd, and it was the Feast of the Holy Innocents was on the 28th of December. And in the letter, he writes on many different fronts about children, and ties it in with Christmas and how joy cannot be separated from tears, which was kind of an interesting interplay. Doc, as you read both the letter and the article here, as you have said to us off the air, you're saying that this is really nothing new. I mean, these are things that he said before. But do you find the context of saying it in the Christmas message interesting here?
I love the context. I love that it's the Feast of the Holy Innocents. I love that it comes at Christmas time. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's gotten a lot of publicity, as much of what he does seems to get these days. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the context, you can't miss that at all. But this is something that several months ago he made a very similar statement to his bishops. But releasing it in this way, at this time, in this kind of an official letter is really spectacular. I love it. The only thing I would say that I didn't like about this, I don't think you mentioned this in your play up here, but one of the things that I notice about this Pope, and I know he's the protector of the church, I get all that, but it's always spoken in a context. Things always come out in a context of how it affects the church. And as a Christian person, I take a little offense at that, because what I see when a bishop covers something up, or God forbid, a priest actually carries out one of these insidious acts, what it really does is it makes God look bad. It's not just the church. And I'm not I mean, the church is fallible. The church is full of ugly people like the four of us in this room. But the reality is, when we do these things, when we let these things go, we really make God look bad. And that's a that's a really big deal. When the church, as a representative of God, makes him look bad, that's the thing we should fear. Not how the church looks, but how the church makes our God look.
I think that's a very interesting point here, too. And he writes it and he puts this in a number of contexts. He talks about the source of Christian joy, Christmas, the heart of Christmas, into the mystery. But also says that we also can be disillusioned at times with the world around us, with the church, and even with ourselves, and feel tempted to indulge in a certain melancholy, lacking in hope, which can lay hold of our hearts, he says in his letter. Christmas is also accompanied, whether we like it or not, by tears. The evangelist did not really disguise reality to make it more credible or attractive. He goes on to talk about how children are exploited in slave labor and sexual exploitation, and he calls it the Herods of our age, who exploit these children, and then he speaks about the sin of those, as he said, those among us, the members of our church who have sinned. So, is that Robert? Do you find that interesting that in the context of speaking of the Herods of our age, he speaks of his own priests?
Yeah, that's a powerful link to the Christmas story, and that we don't hear that much about. Of course, it's after the birth of Christ, and then Herod, when the wise men return and go the other way, and he decides to kill all the
two and under.
Two and under in the kingdom. So the link that the Pope makes is to this suffering, to this fact that children often suffer because of the sins of others, and then draws it out and gives some remarkable statistics on. I'm not going to go through them all, but on how the suffering of young people has multiplied. So it's a powerful from a pastoral point of view, theological point of view. It's a great link, and I really appreciate that.
Carl, I think this is also a reminder to us as pastors, too, that the Christmas story is not concluded until we also go into the escape to Egypt and into the death of the innocents, too.
Correct. We like to look at Christmas and look at all the pretty aspects of it. We like the nice little manger scene. We like the beautiful angels. We like the little children in the pageants dressed up as shepherds. We love all of that. And then we tend to end the story after the visit of the wise men. But you're right, the story does not end there. And what we see here is that even though God has come into the world to be with us, you have people who are in power, because you mentioned earlier, Robert, about people who are, because of the sins of certain people, children suffer. And the people that we're talking about here are people who are in positions of power. We see that with Herod, child exploitation today. It's people in power exerting that power over these innocent children.
And those priests occupy that position of power, too.
The priests very much fit that role.
It's interesting. One of his statements he makes in here, if you don't mind, he says, Christian joy does not arise on the fringes of reality by ignoring it or acting as if it doesn't exist. Christian joy is born from a call, the same call that St. Joseph received, to embrace and protect human life, especially that the holy innocence of our day. Christmas is a time that challenges us to protect life, to help it be born and grow. And, just from our previous session, we see this powerful link between now. He applies that to the joy in the action of being called to protect life, which there is incredible joy. Joy also exists in just the presence of the Lord. He is his strength is our joy, and but I think it's a powerful link, and let's pray that these bishops get the point, that they this penetrates their hearts.
But back to your point, Doc, about that sometimes we worry about making the church look bad instead of how this makes God look bad. When we see the Associated Press and that mass media run this story, and we look at maybe comments that come in various papers, we'll see the non-believers step forward and say this is it demonstrates once again the hypocrisy of the church. And that speaks to what you were saying about making God look bad, is that this isn't very evangelical, but is still necessary to
That's Ezekiel 36. He says, I don't do these things for you, O Israel, but for the glory of my name, which you have profaned among the nations of the earth.
Right.
And that means the church, and we have definitely done our business. But yes, it does show the hypocrisy of the church, but all the more it shows the need for a Savior. Mm-hmm. I don't have any problem with saying I'm a hypocrite or the church is hypocritical or that we make mistakes. But that's not what I'm selling, is perfection. We're selling the need for a Savior, right?
Correct.
Right.
This is again, in the context of that Christmas message, I think it is powerful and is one that we can take as we go through these weeks that are following Christmas as well. But what do you see as ahead for this pontiff and this coming year as well? I mean, do you see this as a year where something like this, which has been going on now for decades, is this in any sense put to rest, or is it?
We're going to know in a month. Because sexual abuse is going on right now in all churches, not just Catholic churches. Mm-hmm. But he's the one that's made the statement. And if heads don't roll within the next month or two, then we'll know it's all for naught. I mean, what I expect to see this year from this pope is I expect to see some bishops and priests deposed, defrocked, laicized, whatever you want to call it. That's what I'd love to see this year.
Yeah, I think the pruning that the Lord often talked about, that He is the vine, we are the branches, and that every so often the pruning has to take place. And He's called it out. He's laid out the
zero tolerance.
Exactly, zero tolerance. Now He's drawn a line
there you go.
In the sand, the bright red line. And let's see if he's better at handling this than some others we've seen. But there's got to be a house cleaning. So let's see what happens. But again, as Doc said, this is convicting in all houses of worship. We could say that regardless of your denomination or whatever, the pornography. It's just unbelievable how pervasive it is in the church.
Sexual sin has always been our most difficult subject.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
and
exactly
remains
right.
that way too. We'll have more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the talk station FM 107 and AM 1240. If you would like to email me, ben@thetalkstation.com, you can always send me an email too with your comments, or also talk about subjects you would like to see addressed. We'd love to hear from you on this coming year as well. And we'll have more to come in just a moment. And welcome back to Faith Matters on the talk station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ed Ball, along with Reverend Carl Zarowski, Reverend Robert Cornigan, and Bishop Doc Loomis. And our next article that we're going to talk about comes from The Stream and a regular contributor, Cal Thomas, who's been around for a long time, a columnist for a number of decades. And he is writing here about the Secretary of State, John Kerry. His headline is Kerry's Two-Faced Middle East Solution. In a recent speech excoriating Israel for refusing to commit suicide by allowing a sworn enemy to have a state adjoining the Jewish state, Secretary of State John Kerry claimed the U.S. government did not draft or originate the UN resolution critical of Israeli settlements. Kerry said there were no American fingerprints on the resolution and that it was totally the idea of the Egyptians and Palestinians, except that it wasn't, if one can believe Egyptian intelligence. He goes on to talk about how Egyptian intelligence describes a what he calls a secret meeting attended by John Kerry, National Security Advisor Susan Rice, a Palestinian delegation, a PLO Executive Committee Secretary, and others, where they talked about Palestinian issues and including the work on the resolution, who would be available for that, and also it states that the sides agreed to cooperate in drafting a resolution on the settlements. So as we look at this, I think what it does, it brings in two things into context here. One is this transition period from after the Trump election to the inauguration on January 20th seems to be filled with a number of pretty egregious acts. I mean, a number of things are kind of pretty out there, including this one where the U.S. has always abstained or actually always vetoed or stood in the way of any resolution that would pass the Security Council that was anti-Israel. And now they're breaking that habit or that protocol or unofficial protocol here by abstaining and allowing this resolution to go through, which harshly criticized those, even though it's non-binding, it still commands the world stage. And then the second part of that context is this part of a transition kind of effort to get some last jabs in at creating a legacy for this administration, or in this case for this State Department. So, Robert, let me just start with you, just looking at this. You had asked me, do we make this theological? Well, the idea is that Israel has held a close tie with us as Christians, obviously, and we are interested in what goes on in attacking and attacks to that land.
Well, absolutely, and basically what has happened is this resolution 2334 has basically said that the old city, the temple area of Jerusalem, city of David, that entire area is now off limits to Jews and Christians, any other faith than Muslim. Now, it doesn't come out and say that specifically, but when you look at how the Palestinian-controlled areas operate, they tolerate to a degree the Arab Christians that are in that area, but there is none whatsoever for Jews. Jews cannot live in Palestinian-controlled areas. Period.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing is, I'm referring to that statement that Kerry made to the press, or actually at the State Department, I think it was, that Israel cannot be democratic and Jewish. It cannot. It has to have a choice. If you're going to be a Jewish state, then you're not democratic. If you're going to be democratic, you're not going to be a Jewish state. I mean, what, 70% of the people living in Israel now are Jews? So that means 30% are not Jews?
Right.
So,
yes.
Israel has been a democratic state from the beginning, but for Kerry to come out and state that as American policy it's beyond absurd. I mean,
Do we, Doc? Do you think that we, as American policy, we only look at the Zionist of the state and not regard the faith aspect of the state? I'm not sure I'm phrasing that correctly, but maybe you kind of
secular versus
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there's no question that's what we're looking at. If you've ever looked at a map of the suggested You know, the much vaunted two-state solution, which has been on the boards since before the Camp David Accords and or Oslo Accords, Camp David, and all that stuff back in the 70s. This two-state solution that John Kerry is proffering right now, it takes into account absolutely nothing about the heritage of the country or the religion of the country.
Right.
It's simply a matter of appeasing a group that he's afraid is going to smack us if we don't. He's trying to appease an Arab and largely Muslim group. And if you look at it, I mean, the way the country would be divided up under this, a lot of people think, well, like the old kingdoms. Like there'll be a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom.
Right.
Oh, no. It looks more like the full chicken dinner on your plate at Cox Restaurant. I mean, there's a leg here and there's a thigh here and the Gaza's over here. And it's an unbelievable mess what they want to do there. I also agree with Robert. I do think that there's clearly a way to go forward democratically. But somewhere in the next 100 years, there's going to be a solution to this. But it's not going to come now. It's not going to come in Paris in January 15th when he goes there. We would have more success if we sent Drew Carey or Mariah Carey or Jim Carey. Any of the Careys could go and do a better job of seeing through this morass than John Kerry. Oh. This is a very self-serving American thing. They want a weak Israel because a weak Israel, they think, on all these other nations that signed this bill, a weak Israel means that they're a stronger nation. Period. End of story. That's it. If they're weak, then we can be stronger.
Well, and there are rumors that it's not just going to be John Kerry in Paris.
Mariah is going?
Yeah. Well, not now after the fiasco.
She'll lip sync or
But
whatever.
that Obama is talking about going.
That'd be great. See, that would really show America for what we are.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So we've committed. I tell you, from the theological point of view, you don't mess with Israel. Israel is the apple of God's eye. Now, I know there's secularists and religious and all of that, but it's the land we're talking about, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. And all of this stuff is prophesied. I mean, it's staggering to see how this is progressing with Russia and Syria and Iran and Turkey and all of this taking place. It's just staggering.
Carl, when we look at this, and to Doc's point there about trying to appease a group, if we were looking at this as a way to stem the tide of terrorism, we see there's nothing there that's going to do that, because if anything is theological, the terrorist view is that their view is theologically correct. And it doesn't matter how much land you're going to give them; it's not going to make any difference.
That's right. It won't make any difference at all. They're just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until they have all of it.
Till they drive the Jews into the sea.
The Jews.
That's their goal.
That's what will happen.
And it's never been. They've never rescinded that. That's always stayed.
Never recognized Israel.
No,
never
exactly
rescinded the idea that they would eliminate them from the face of the earth.
That's exactly right.
In fact, the two PA main components have both pledged that Israel needs to be wiped off the face of the earth and every Jew killed.
Right.
Way, that'll work.
Yeah. So this is very much a kind of a Neville Chamberlain kind of negotiation. This is a
peace in our time,
and does not. It has nothing. I mean, along with the Iranian deal, it's no guarantee of any.
Well, you talked about legacy before, and maybe we can go there, because I think Obama is well aware that he has no way of stopping this Congress from dismantling what he considered his highest achievement, which was, the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. So that's been a disaster. And so this is his last grasp at something.
He is a man in search of a legacy.
Right.
And he's going to go to Chicago, to make that speech about that, in a sense, and facing a city with the highest murders they've had in their history. So,
well, he's, you do leave a legacy. The question is, what kind of legacy do you leave? And so that's what we're seeing. I mean, I know what kind he thinks he needs to leave, but what we're seeing from the last years is that so many of his legacy items have turned out to be not blessings, but
You're so
opposite.
kind.
But is this though by John Kerry's as they say two-faced instead of two-state solution here,
Right.
two-faced solution? Does that again put a knock on those who have beliefs and who want to see that their beliefs have weight in the public square? I mean, I think that it's part of a larger issue there about this mantra of you stay in your house and don't come out here and tell us what to do and tell us your opinion on things. So anyway, this is
Well, you see, I mean, the number of nations, what was it, 14-0 with U.S. abstaining,
right,
and the countries that voted for it,
right, that are in the Security Council,
that
now.
are in the
Yeah.
Security Council now.
We'll have more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the talk station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And welcome back to Faith Matters on the talk station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben Ball, and I am accompanied today, of course, by Bishop Doc Loomis, also Reverend Carl Zarowski, and Reverend Robert Cornegie.
Tolerating
See,
me.
I had to get in the first word here. And we are walking alongside each other in this through this
We're
through this
inclusive
segment.
in this as well, aren't we?
It's quite the diverse group. So this is some of what we're going to be talking about here. This is an article in Stream. It's called "A Few Words I Hope We Stop Speaking in 2017." It's by Jennifer Hartline. The subtitle, 2016 was the year of nonsensical language and perversion of speech. Now, this is not kind of an unusual topic. I mean, there are a lot of writers. I know, Carl, you were telling us about George Will doing an article that has a lot of good stuff. We may have to reference at point too, but she takes on some other things that are maybe a little bit broader in their topics. She starts out by saying, is there any better way to undermine a society, an entire civilization, than to pervert its language? I'm not talking about confusion due to foreign language or misunderstanding due to ignorance of the language, but intentionally corrupting a language so the words are perverted to take on a nonsensical and destructive meaning contrary to their actual meaning. There you go. And then requiring everyone to speak the nonsense under threat of severe penalty. So this is what we've talked about in 2016. We've brought up our own from time to time, things like safe spaces, and some of the words that are spoken of here. The first one, diversity. This new modern doctrine says that nothing can simply be as it naturally would be. It must be forcibly made diverse, or else it is bigoted and exclusive. However, the natural by design diversity of man and woman is to be eschewed. To recognize the inherent natural differences between a man and woman is somehow sexist and bigoted as well. Robert, we have seen plenty of examples of this through this past year. And they're going to
this is
continue.
the diversity bomb, because that's huge. So you got to make sure. And look, the church is just as guilty of this as anybody else.
Right.
When we form our committees,
Right.
what do we normally do? Mm-hmm. We try to, and when you're taking a picture of a photograph of your church, what do you try to do? You try to get as many, you make sure you got people diversely placed.
You position them.
You
yes.
position them. You over here and you here. And so, look at the ads that are on TV. I mean, you get everything. I mean, It used to be, I like the way she puts that. She says, it denies what naturally occurs. Mm-hmm. It's a fact that birds of a feather tend to flock together. I mean, I've heard that all my life. And so, that's just an observation of the way people work. Mm-hmm. We tend to be attracted to people that are somewhat like us and share our interest, and we tend to go that way. But diversity doesn't let you do that anymore. I mean, you were talking about this after the last doc about the how, we've got to be so strategic about making sure we get everybody on there and that the balance skews, you know, the percentages. It's all about percentages now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and diversity again creeps into, as we said, into the church, into all kinds of things. I mean, that we think of, but it's been around for a long time. But with the idea of making sure that opportunities exist. But now it's for the sake of it.
That's right.
Not for achieving any certain kind of ecumenical position or balance, really. It's for the sake of it, diversity. Not,
well, you hope that things are going to be naturally diverse.
Yeah.
But when you have to force it, that's where you get into a problem. I mean, look at our group here. Mm-hmm. We are not a very diverse group. 4 white guys sitting around, all Protestants, talking about all kinds of different subjects. But we need to work on the diversity on this panel.
All right.
Yes.
You're fired. Let's look at the next one here. Inclusivity, which is, again, let's say the opposite side of that coin. The modern code for no one can form any group, organization, business, club, church, or any other gathering of 2 or more people unless said gathering is open to every human on the planet of any reason for that human may desire to participate. That sounds like the mission statement for a lot of groups.
This is so ridiculous. Look, the end result of diversity. If you take diversity all the way to the end, what do you have? Lots of little ones. I mean, you don't have no community, no society. You have lots of little ones. So it fits perfectly into nihilism and individualism and all that other stuff. So diversity is the individualist's dream. But the irony of it is it's draped in this cloak of inclusivity, which suggests community.
Unity.
It's like we're yelling for unity and community, but in reality, we're dividing us up into ones. Carl, what do you think about that?
I agree.
That's a good
I agree. Well, what troubles me is words like diversity and inclusive and inclusivity. Those are great words. But now, all of a sudden, I have to be careful about how I use those words because those words have become such political hot potatoes that if I throw one out in a statement, then suddenly people begin to question, well, what exactly is he trying to say?
Right.
And you don't own the word.
In a sense, we have been robbed of some of our language.
That's right.
Well, I remember a bishop asking a Methodist pastor that I know about the practice of inclusivity in his church, and he said, "No, we're actually very exclusive. We'll only allow sinners."
Yeah.
So I thought that was a great answer. That was that was more than a decade ago. That was about 20 years ago he said that. Now here's another one. This is accompanying and accompaniment. Now this one is interesting because this goes along with the language that we've been hearing from Rome lately. The writer here again, and her name is Jennifer Hartline. She writes, "This applies especially to the relatively recent rhetoric in the Catholic Church. If I hear one more bishop or priest talk about how we are to be a church that accompanies people, I may lose my lunch. We're going to accompany people straight into darkness and perdition. As a Catholic, I'm trying to figure out when preaching the gospel became accompanying people as they continue to walk roads that lead them away from God. Jesus told us to repent, take up our cross, and follow him." Is this... Doc, do you see this as being pretty startling way? I mean, is she onto something here?
Well, yeah. I mean, the Pope said it, right? That's where we've heard it most recently about accompanying our gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, and other folks. And, I think that's pretty well sums it up from my perspective. I'll accompany you so far, but there's a line I don't go past, and if you choose to go that way, then I guess you're out of communion with me. That's what it means to be out of communion, right? Yeah. That's the line I don't accompany you past.
Carl?
Well, what I see with this accompanying and accompaniment, I see, especially for the church, if we're doing this, then what we're doing is we're conforming to the world. And in the United Methodist Church, our mission is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And that's what we're called to do, to change the world, not to be like the world. It doesn't mean that that we have to condemn people who are doing things that are outside of God's will, but And I think that for a time, perhaps we do need to walk alongside of them to gain their trust. But there has to be a time, like this woman says, there has to be a time where we stand in front of that person and say, okay, you need to stop, you need to turn around.
Right.
Just looking at it from a theological perspective as well, the Holy Spirit is often referred to as the Paraclete, and Paraclete means the one who comes alongside. Mm-hmm. And so there is that sense, and I agree with what Carl said, that when we are in relationship with people who don't share our beliefs, there is a period of time when we are listening.
Right. Presence.
That ministry of presence, where we're allowing them to express, because we really and don't know exactly. We can make assumptions and all of that, but there is that paraclete period where we come alongside, and then we begin. Right. The idea is that we're on a journey and we're journeying together, and that we're going to be with God's help, influencing them onto the path of righteousness.
The paraclete comes with a rudder.
Yes, exactly.
so it comes alongside,
and
then guides you back on the right track.
That's exactly right.
That's a difference. From
and the Spirit of God gives us the words,
right?
Gives us the process to be able to accomplish.
Again, Jennifer Hartline is writing here about words that she would like to see not be used in 2017 as we use them here. One of those is tolerance. Tolerance, that most revered of modern virtues, except it isn't a virtue. Patience, kindness, charity, chastity, purity, generosity, justice, mercy, these are virtues. Tolerance, as preached today, only means that one side must silently abide anything and everything that someone else may say, do, or demand. Since to object is to be intolerant, with one very important exception we'll get to shortly. We saw the frightening lengths which tolerance police will go to this year, even when our children were targeted for slamming and scolding. I think you brought up in the George Will article how a child was castigated for saying the word brownies when he meant the confection.
Correct.
And that's just terrible. And then she also goes on to talk about identifying trans, the most nonsensical of all, and that probably requires an entire show. So, guys, thanks for joining us once again on Faith Matters on the Talk Station.
Thank you for joining us for Faith Matters. Email your comments, questions, and suggestions to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. Give me faith.
Faith Matters is a production of the Talk Station.